week ago.
These are the guys, the fallen from the 12th of February in the center of Caracas, in the La Candelaria. The policeman that shoot these guys.
Venezuela's socialist president, Nicolas Maduro, accuses opposition protesters of starting the violence and calls them fascists.
I don't like Hugo Chavez. I did not like him, but I like Maduro worse. I mean, I don't like him at all. I think he has, he's following Cuba.
A call for silence in memory of the dead. The students have traced out on the ground SOS, the international distress sign, Save Our Souls. They say that the crime wave is killing them. They say that inflation is bleeding cash from their pockets. And they say that food shortages are starving them. But the government argues it's right-wing businessmen who are strangling the economy in a bid to bring Venezuela to its political knees. Thursday's demo in a middle-class Caracas neighborhood was small. Students briefly blocked a street. We have to protest like this in the street. We've had enough of the government beating us up every day, he says. But there's a disagreement over tactics.
What's going on here is just another example of one of the problems that is facing the opposition, and that is internal division. Some of the students say that it's important to block main streets.
Others say the only solution is peaceful dialogue. What seems certain is that if opposition groups can't forge a united front, they stand little chance of forcing the government to talk, let alone resign. Carl Penhall, CNN, Caracas.
The United Nations is calling for an additional 3,000 troops to be deployed to the Central African Republic as conflict continues to ravage the already battered country. The UN Under-Secretary for Humanitarian Affairs, Valerie Amos, has decried the conditions of refugees living in the camps on the outskirts of the country. We have more of that in this report.
The Sangharis military operation in the Central African Republic are moving towards the countryside. First step, going to the west to secure the main road leading to the capital. A redeployment that aims to reassure civilian populations and disarm all kinds of militia. Many of them now come to the villages pretending they belong to this or that self-defense militia. In fact, all they do is abuse and plunder. In other words, criminal and heinous acts against the population. We must stop these people. However, this attempt at raising awareness is not enough to restore peace and security. The United Nations Coordinator for Emergency Aid, Valerie Amos, accompanied by a delegation, was able to observe this on the ground in Bosangoa. In the city, thousands of displaced people, Muslims and Christians alike, have been living in fear for months now.
Innocent civilians of all communities have witnessed and borne the brunt of unspeakable violence. People are so afraid that they sleep in the bush at night, are in displacement sites, or have been forced to flee their country.
According to this delegation, there aren't enough troops on the ground. The UN Secretary General is launching a new call on the international community.
I call for the rapid reinforcement of the African Union and French troops now on the ground, with additional deployments of at least 3,000 more troops and police.
The UN wants these reinforcements to arrive as soon as possible and says they must also have air power. This would be an intermediary stage prior to the deployment of UN peacekeepers in the country.
The basketball league. The Basketball League kicks off this evening with some intriguing games pitting some of the top sides. The Gambia Basketball Association is aiming to build on the successes of the just-ended 3-on-3 basketball tournament. Babakar Senghor reports on this.
Has been talked about in different places. The league season is set to throw up some fascinating contests, not least the opening match between arch-rivals Brikama team against YMCA. with coaches, referees and players represented at the pre-tournament briefing. The GBA unveiled grand plans meant to repackage, remodel and return this once popular sport to periods of bygone ages.
There are 10 things that I want to emphasize this season, and we would not want to compromise on them. And the first one is the timeliness. I know last year even the executive were late at times, but we want to assure you that we would make sure that the referees and whoever is there as match commissioner would be there on time, and the rules would be explained to you, the rules of the league, and those rules would be adhered to by the letter. They have been agreed on, and they would be circulated after this one.
This is very simple. There are rules and regulations. We will have what we call the FIBA rules, which I believe every player and every coach should understand. If at all you're having difficulties being able to interpret the FIBA rules, you can ask for assistance from the referees. I'm quite willing to come to clubs. We have a training together during your training session, and we will be able to be there to help you interpret some of the rules. This would reduce a lot of conflicts, a lot of controversies during the course of our matches.
The success of the 3-on-3 tournament at the start of the year has inspired both players and the GBA members. No wonder there is optimism and anticipation ahead of the start of the league season.
We actually are expected to get an electronic scoreboard from the United States, so it should be here by next week, and that electronic scoreboard will go to the stadium. Yes, definitely. And the rest, as he mentioned, the rest will start to go to Banjul. From Banjul, then we'll move out. Okay, so it's good news. And this is also important for players to start to use the electronic scoreboard, because there are certain things that most of our players are not exposed to.
This is a new season. A season the GBA is hopeful will truly herald the revitalization of basketball in the country after many false dawns. For Grts Sport Days, Babukar Senghor.
And before we take leave of you, a quick reminder of the day's top stories. Operatives of the National Drugs Enforcement Agency, NDEA, have apprehended 9 suspects in a major raid, underlining the agency's resolve to rid the country of illicit substances. Protesters in Venezuela have been venting their fury at the arrest of opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez, accused of inciting violence in the Latin American country. And the United Nations is calling for the deployment of additional boats in the Central African Republic as the world body decried the appalling condition of refugees in the conflict-weary nation. That was all in the edition of the News at 10. Thanks for the pleasure of your company. Do stay with GRTS.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Gannaaw buñ sante Yàlla julli ci Rasulullah, ñu ngi wax ummatu Rasulullah yépp ne assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ñun waa Pipeline Mos ñoo fi ñëw dellu si waat gannaaw bu ñu borom bi baaxee ñu fas yéene màggal juddute juma Pipeline bii doon ñaar fukkeeli atam ak ñeent. ñu ànd ak yéen ci jotaay bi di imam Fallou Diouf moom ma féete càmmoñ, imam Modou Aliou Diallo féete ma cëccati ndeyjoor, ki ses ci man rek di Aji Ami Diallo. ñii ñoom la jumaa ji tànn pour ñu ñëw waxtaan ak yéen ngir fas yéene màggal juddute juma Pipeline ak gàmmu gu réy bi nga xam ne at bu jot dinañ ko def, comme ni ma ko waxee bii mooy ñaar fukkeeli at ak ñeent. ñu ngi ci oo ñëpp, moo xam ñi ci nekk ci biir réew mi, moo xam ñi nekk bitim réew, comme que ñun ñëpp ñoo bokk jumaa ji, amul xaaj ak seen. yéen ñëpp ñu ngi leen di fàttali ne ñaar fukki fan la ak ñaar ci weer wi, muy samedi ji dégmal, ci lañ fas yéene def gàmmu gi. gàmmu gi nag ren kañ ko teg ca kaw muy chief pédro mooy Aji Ami Diba. Aji Ami Diba kenn la ci doomi réew yi, kenn la itam ci ummatu Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, dëkkee ci Gambia fii yàlla baaxee ko mu nekk ci wàll gi di kombo tubaab